It was the most exciting day of the entire week of the Paris collection. These two Japanese designers always did their shows in tents in the courtyard of the Louvre. People will be elbowing each other out of the way at the entrance, wanting to get in first. Once, I got dragged along by the crowd and smashed up against the fence. I thought I might have cracked some ribs, but I was hell-bent on seeing the show, so I just ignored the pain. By the time the show ended, I was so excited that I'd forgotten all about it. Those were the words of 𝗷𝗫𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, editor of Vogue Paris, about Yohji Yamamoto's 1980s shows. Yohji Yamamoto and 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 dropped an absolute bomb on Paris for the Spring-Summer 1983 show, the one that changed the world. There would be no Martin Margiela, there would be no Rick Owens, there would be no fashion as we know it today without Yohji Yamamoto. But before the big explosion in Paris, a fire had been burning for years in the faraway lands of Japan. It's the late 1970s, it's been 30 years since the big war, and Japan is experiencing its economic miracle. Japanese cars were becoming well known around the world. A new generation of young adults were born in Japan. They had more money and they were all moving to the cities. And along with that came a generation of new designers who would cater to their creative and self-expressive needs. This was known as the DC brand boom, DC for designer and character, in opposition to the mass brands that dominated Japan, like Renown, Kashiyama, and Van Jacket. These DC brands were making creative and unique clothing, sometimes from their own bedrooms. Within that DC brand roster, there was names such as Biggie, Nicole, as well as well-loved names even to this day, like Hysteric Glamour, Issey Miyake, Comme des Garçons, and of course, Yohji Yamamoto. Yohji's first big show was in 1977 on the big stage of Tokyo. Just a few days before that show, Yohji was standing in front of his sample pieces and he wasn't satisfied. Things didn't look right, so he asked his closest staff to wash and dry these pieces and put them straight into the runway without any ironing. According to Yohji, when he laid his eyes on these pieces, they were oversized, they were wrinkly. However, they had a unique sense of power. And they were absolutely loved by the Japanese public. The press called them the aesthetics of wrinkles. And this will become a fundamental motif for Yohji Yamamoto. You can see it in his clothing even to this day. What happened next was Yohji had an absolute frenzy of orders coming in. He was working so hard every day that he called these years his lost decade. In Yohji Yamamoto's atelier, there was a map of Japan. Every time he had a new shop by his clothing, he would put a pin onto the map where that shop was. Eventually, the pins covered the entire country of Japan. Japan was already conquered. There was nowhere else for Yohji to go but Paris. So Yohji suggested to his fellow fashion designer and romantic partner at the time, 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, that they should go to Paris and do a show there. And Ray was like, well, I'll think about it. I mean, I'm pretty busy here in Japan, I don't think I can do it. And Yohji was like, well, fine, I'll go to Paris on my own then. So in 1981, Yohji opened a small shop in Paris and did a small runway show to a collection of buyers. His show was so popular that the buyers broke the elevator in his building. They had never seen anything like this before in France. And one of the buyers who came into his shop was like, Monsieur Yamamoto, you know your romantic partner 𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, yeah? Well, she's actually doing a show right there down the street in that hotel. And I kid you not, Yohji Yamamoto was literally like, what? And that's not even the craziest part about the story, like you wouldn't guess who he was telling the secret to. Yeah, it was Rick Owens. According to Yohji, this was the first fracture that led to the breakup of their 10-year relationship. Anyways, by any metric, the 1981 show had been a great success. And although there were some unpleasant opinions voiced by members of the fashion industry, Yohji decided to go ahead and do a much bigger show for 1983 Spring-Summer on the official Paris fashion collection. The predominant mood in Paris fashion back then in the 80s was big. It was about glamour, fantasy, sex appeal. Claude Montana, Mugler, Jean-Paul Gaultier, they were all the rage back then. If you look at their shows, you'll see these big padded shoulders. There was a myriad of color alongside exposed skin and accentuated waists, butts, and breasts. Within all of this, Yohji Yamamoto walks in as an outsider and performs his 1983 Spring-Summer show. Within the show, you had these black dresses that look absolutely torn, like completely tattered. Everything was crazy oversized, you couldn't tell the shape of the person underneath. And to add insult to injury, it was even asymmetric. Now in Yohji's defense, if we look closely at the details of these garments, you can tell that these holes, they're not actually torn. All the edges of the holes are actually finished. But the French fashion establishment didn't care. They saw this as an insult. They saw this as an attack on their traditional fashion system of couture, of traditional beauty. Everything was in black, a taboo color to wear. You'd only wear all black for funerals, definitely not for fashion. The French newspaper Le Figaro called it Yellow Peril, World War III survivor, rags. Women's Wear Daily made a whole freaking page with a Yohji Yamamoto look, a 𝗀𝗀𝗶 look, and then a big X crossed through them was the word sayonara. These were some of the most powerful, most influential publications, and they absolutely slammed Yohji Yamamoto. You could say he got cancelled. Hell, someone even called it Hiroshima-chic, and that name stuck. As an aside, a lot of the media attacks also apply to 𝗀𝗀𝗶, who debuted at the same time as Yohji Yamamoto. If you look at the video I did on that and the pieces that 𝗀𝗀𝗶 put out, the Hiroshima connection might be a bit hard to grasp, but if you look at Yohji Yamamoto's pieces, as offensive as it might be, yeah, it's kind of obvious here. And of course, Yohji Yamamoto never meant to make mourning clothes, nor was he trying to attack the world of French fashion. How about we listen to the words of the master himself from this rare interview of the Spring-Summer 1983 show.
Do you think that your conception of fashion is going to change something in the whole world of fashion?
Oh, I don't think so.
Why?
Because you know, our type of wearing is quite unusual for Occidental people, because our Asian way to wear is just like fabric.
Yeah.
That's all, and we have to wrap it, bring it, hang it.
Yeah.
So it's rather difficult, I think.
Yohji was not trying at all to change the world. He was just advancing his own vision of beauty, one that was based on his own background. It was just too different for people to understand. In a separate interview, he recounts that, "I had no intention of opposing the status quo. I simply released a line that felt right to me, and the reaction split neatly into those who approved and those who did not." Indeed, despite all of the opposition, to some of the journalists, Yohji Yamamoto was an absolute revelation. Like Irene Silvagni from Vogue Paris. The first Yohji show I saw really threw me. It was like I was reading an entirely new book. It was really moving. I felt a shiver down my spine. It emphasized a new human figure, something we hadn't seen before. He seemed to be hinting at something subtle, but he never quite came out and really exposed it. I got really emotional, but I can't explain or describe why, really. Irene was so enamored by Yohji Yamamoto's work that in 1992, she quit her job at Vogue to work for Yohji. She worked for him for over 20 years, eventually becoming the creative director of Yohji Yamamoto. Irene has since passed away in 2022. May she rest in peace. Yohji couldn't have been more wrong. He did end up changing the world of fashion. Distressed clothing in all black would become a hallmark of designers such as Rick Owens and Belgian designers such as 𝗀𝗵𝗽𝗄𝗯. The voice that Yohji expressed in 1982 undoubtedly had an impact on fashion. But in the end, what was he trying to say? So what was this emotional new human figure that Irene felt in Yohji's shows? This vision coming from his own background, his own upbringing. In the next part, we will solve the mystery of what was Yohji's vision of beauty. If you're interested, do the usual things and stay tuned for part 2 of Yohji Yamamoto, the femme fatale. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Metin out.